počkej, teďka to bude dobrý.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning. Welcome to camp. I usually say welcome to another edition of Urban Talks, but this is the last edition of Urban Talks. Before we will move to another place, because this amazing building by Karel Prager and Jiří Kadeřábek will undergo major refurbishment, so that's good news for us, but it means that the whole summer, we will spend the whole summer somewhere in the city during the guided tours, and of course in a few days we will tell you what will be the new address of Center for Architecture and Metropolitan Planning. We call it Camp Temp, and I hope that you will meet us there very soon, like during the September or October, we will see. We will tell you more, so follow us and check our program, because we will, of course, mention that. During the lecture, you will be able to join the discussion with our guests, so you can use Slido, slido.com, you can scan the QR code or you can write it in your browser, and you will be able to ask questions via a very simple form. And if you prefer transcript of the lecture, you can use the second QR code and you will be able to read what we talk about in Czech or in English. It's up to you. Today we will talk about EUmies Awards and about winning projects. It's very anticipated award, of course. It's very prestigious. And 2 years ago, we had a chance to be part of the exhibition, because the exhibition is touring around Europe, and the countries that were on the short list, the very short list of the finalists of the competition, the awards, they can join the exhibition and share the program with EUmies. And we were lucky to be here, and we were lucky to visit the city where the winning project was established, the Braunschweig, close to Berlin. So you were maybe part of the program. And this year we're really lucky that we have the winners of the awards really soon after the ceremony that was held in Barcelona in Mies van den Rohe Pavilion. So today we will talk about two projects, about two co-authors of those projects. One of them will be Jan der Vylder from team AgwA and architecten Jan der Vylder and Inge Vinck. They are authors of the winning project in Charleroi Palais des Expositions. So we will talk about this really amazing project of transformation of 50s exhibition and congress complex in the city Charleroi in Belgium. So we will have a chance to see the process and the approach of this project. And of course, we will also discuss the project of emerging winner, because as you know, during the Mies Awards, you have two winners. One is chosen from 5 finalists and one is from 2. And the emerging winner this year is Vidic Vidic Grohar Arhitekti, and we will share the experience with Rohe Grohar, author and co-author of Temporary Spaces for Slovenian National Theatre in Ljubljana, Slovenia. So another amazing project, and today we will start with this one. So I would like to ask Rohe to join me on stage, and I would like to gladly give him a floor. Welcome to camp.
Thank you. So thank you all for coming. A big thanks to the organizers to invite our office that I represent here, and that I'm in such a great company. So I will present one project because I have just half an hour or even less, and somehow I'm not able to squeeze more than one project in this time frame. Because probably I think that projects are more complex than they really are, and I tend to over-explain them. So I come from Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia. Ljubljana is a hyper small city, as you will see later. 300,000 inhabitants. The whole Slovenia has 2 million, so a bit more than Prague. So our office is, at the moment, me and my partner Anja, that maybe is observing me on YouTube or Zoom. So hi. And of course, we are just two. And our method of working is, of course, when we began working together 10 years ago, we also then had some students and architects working for us, but somehow we decided to slim down and we work alone on smaller projects, I mean this one is for our scale big, but for for other projects we usually collaborate also with other offices. So these are exhibitions, then renovations, new projects, etc. So project in progress, it's the project that I'm showing is not a final state, and it was never thought to be a final state, but is just one point at some kind of process that is, let's say, a renovation of a building. This here is an artwork of Mladen Stilinovic. Mladen Stilinovic is a late Croatian artist, and he, of course, in a way, conceptualize the idea of laziness. So how, but not really to be lazy, but how to work in a different way. And for us, this is a very inspiring artwork. I think it's from the 90s or early 2000s, that in a way, it's called lazy mathematics. Basically, it's for us, it's very inspiring, and it in a way, represents what could be a possible attitude towards architecture. So it's how it least means you can produce the same result or a bit different result. No? Because our project and a lot of our projects are done within very scarce means. I think this button doesn't work very well. Okay, so this is Ljubljana. Okay, so this is what you see here. This is the center of the city, and most of cultural institutions are squeezed here inside, and this is the location of our project. So this is the highway ring. This is the inner ring, so it's kind of the same situation as in Vienna, only a lot smaller, and this is the outside ring. So this is this small city, and of course for Ljubljana circumstances, this is also a total suburbia. But if this would be in Prague, this would be probably part of the city center. So how the whole project, in a way, the project happens because in the city center there is old historic building, a bit more than 100 years old, that was in such a bad state that the ensemble of the National Theatre had to move very quickly to a new premises, which is now here. So this is again the highway ring, and this is an ex-industrial area, and this is the location of our project. This is the whole area was constructed after the Second World War. It was a different kind of industry. They produced cars. They put inox turbines for electrical factories, and part of this industry still exists here in these buildings. And of course, later these buildings are also part of industry still remains. Part of industry was torn down and organized in some kind of generic situation of a post-industrial business area and so on. So this was the hall that part of our project began. So this was, of course, an industrial building from the 60s. It didn't have any special qualities. So I mean qualities in the normal sense. So it didn't have any architectural specificities in a way that would be some kind of stylistic property, or also the structures were not very heroic or especially interesting. But what was the biggest quality? It was this, in a way, vast space. So it's 2,000 square meters where you could put, where you could intervene with the program. And of course, this was also a part of these warehouses. So the situation was not very inspiring. So this is the internal courtyard that was at that point when we began to work on this building, almost 10 years ago, just in a way a parking lot, but later became something I would hope a lot more interesting. So this is again the whole building. We began, almost 10 years ago. We began here with the bistro. So this was the office build. After Slovenia went independent, a lot of this industry somehow bankrupt or was privatized, and this was empty building that the investor bought in, I don't know, 2005, wanted to tear it down to develop it, but then this crisis came, and they never did it. They just very simply renovated all the premises. This was the office building for 200 inhabitants. Everything else was car park and warehouses for computers, photo cameras, and such stuff that they actually sold. But then, of course, this company changed. The owner began to sell off parts of the company and began to like this building and wanted to make a kind of public facility out of it. So to invite programs that were not introverted, exclusive, but kind of more public. So, but this was around 2017, and of course, the first thing was actually a bistro that we made, and it was first, let's say, public sparkle in this area, and then the gym came. At that point, there was no interest. No one wanted to rent space here, even for very cheap money. And of course, here is an office space that we did, and then the next thing was this multi-purpose hall. Because this was the idea that there should be some kind of cultural use at some point produced here. So the hall that you previously saw had bad roof, bad structure that was falling apart. Also, the roof was from asbestos. So very quickly we had to remove the roof. This was one August a few years ago. So this kind of, here you see the atrium. This was the situation, and then we produced this kind of roof that was very just kind of technical solution, not really in a way architectural. It was just kind of ceiling that in a way newly covered the whole premises. But of course, we already knew that all the time that we cannot foresee what will be the program. So our strategy was again to, in a way, to make two service parts. So one was kind of backstage for these events that later happened, and this kind of, we call it ziggurat, was this entry building with the entrance, with toilets, bar, etc. So, and of course, you see at that point, we thought that here will be maybe a restaurant or something. But of course, then things changed. Then this was the first part of the building. This was before the theater. And of course, the the owner wanted to make a multi-purpose hall here. So it was in between the COVID. We knew that we will have to work very quickly. There was a lot of lockdowns in Ljubljana, in Slovenia, and we knew that there will be all the material won't be available all the time. That we won't be able to observe the building site, and everything had to be built quickly. So we decided to do it in a very simple way with bricks and the most simple concrete possible. And of course, that the details that we want be able to produce really nice Swiss details, which is kind of wish of every Slovenian architect. And we try to do it in a way that this kind of won't be a problem, no? And this was the first part that was built. So a lot of this was built, was drawn via Zoom with our co-workers at that time. And so with this kind of simple execution in this big empty void, we wanted that our intervention had some kind of architectural autonomy. So we just colored it with the most silvery color that we could get. And I think we also negated then in a way this kind of almost banal stereotomic structure. No? So it lost a bit of weight, and of course it shined quite nicely when it was nice weather. Button doesn't work very well. So these kind of really simple details. Of course, here is a lot of stuff that was already there. So this was here, this was already here. So basically we said, okay, what's there? We should just leave it. We didn't say, okay, it doesn't look really nice. We should make it we should make it nicer. It's just there. We give some kind of amnesty to it and work in a way with it. And of course, the scarcity of means also give this because we didn't have kind of big money to do things. We had to invent details to be very simple. So this is just profiles with which you do dry walls and then light inside. And these are ventilation pipes just cut, and we made lights out of it. So this was later interpreted in different ways and different designs and this kind of stuff. But of course, it wasn't just to be cheap, but also it was a way of put some kind of level of design in this very, very rough building. Toilets, again, you see these lights appearing in some kind of, in a way, as chandeliers. So this was again the entry ziggurat. So it was quite interesting here inside. During the day, here was a big parking lot for 40 cars, and of course here for the evening here, big trucks came inside, put the stage. There was party for 3,000, 4,000 people that were all around here. The next day it was cleaned up, and the next day it was already again the parking. So it was this kind of space that changed all the time, but it had also this rough use. And our idea was, of course, this materiality had somehow to survive. That maybe someone maybe has an accident with the car here and so on. So it can somehow be able to absorb all these kind of different uses, and imperfections, and of course the changes that could be that usually are made by the user. So this was then how it was used, but there were also some more calm events. The resolution is bad, but I like it because it reminds me a bit of some ideas of Cedric Price. And because of this kind of happenings, then this was the situation. So with this project in a way became very known in Ljubljana, and when the theater had to move out, when the theater had to move out, when in the city center, they found this location as one possible to. It was for them. It was they see that it was possible to do it, because this part was already in a way almost prepared for the big hall, and there was also 2,000 square meters of remaining space where all the other stages could be organized. And of course, what was interesting, because they had to move out very quickly, the time frame for making the project was very short. So when we signed the contract, until the first show, it was 10 months. So we had to make a project, and the project had to be built in 10 months. And because of that, also, it is like it is. No? So this was kind of the situation of this multi-purpose hall, and then it was the theater. So the idea, what was the strategy? The strategy was, we don't know what will happen, and the program will so or so change. So we make some, oops. Maybe the battery is bad, I don't know. Huh? Yeah. Yes, and you will have the same problem after me. So yes, of course, we did some, let's say, infrastructural course that can host all kinds of programs and events, and that will remain here also after different use. This was also the idea here. And then we we had to then put new kind of ephemeral structures inside to host new program, which was temporary national theater. So the idea was that the theater will remain here between 3.5 and 5 years until they renovate the old building, which didn't happen yet. So they will probably remain a few years more, but either way, the idea is that this will stay here for a few years, and then the program will probably change in something else. So we had things that are kind of solid and things that are maybe soft, and will change with the program. So this is what's the situation today. So this is the pink parts are the public parts where public can enter. So the main hall, the main stage, and here the small hall and the small stage. All the blue color is parts that are not accessible, that are services or that are for preparing for the upcoming shows. So this is the floor plan. So I will explain this part now. So in a way, yes, this was already done by us before, and we put temporary structure, the main stage, inside in that way that we produced a covered foyer and the main stage. So basically we have three structures that service and articulate.
Just say next, and they're gonna click it for you.
Okay.
Say next always.
Okay. So next. This is better, yes. So in a way, this is the idea also how this space functions. It's very important that when you do this kind of interventions, they don't have big budgets, that you don't do just technical solution, because they expected from us just technical solutions. So do it, we will be there for a few years, and then we go to the new, nice, old, and new renovated building. But we, again, wanted to make architecture out of it, so every gesture that we did is some kind of architectural statement. Next. So this is the context, the entrance to the main stage. Of course, again, from the outside, there are, I don't know, 1,000 square meters of kind of this really not interesting facade, but again, we didn't want to waste sources to make it more beautiful, no, because, and just put drama, which is the name of the theater, in order to communicate with cars that go here quickly, so that you see it. And here is the entrance that's in a way more tactile. Next. So the entrance to the main stage is kind of covered loggia, but on the right-hand side you have also some kind of long bench that also serves as the bus station. Next. So this is the entrance, of course, the red carpet. Next. So this is the windbreak, and for us, this is the part that from this kind of banal outside changes to the inside. And because everyone was afraid, yes, we will come to some industrial building on the edge of the city, and there will be cold and wind, and everything will be a disaster. So we wanted also to show people that actually it will be a theater. So we were basically working also with archetypes of the theater, so that that it's understood that's actually a theater. So for us, one idea of a basic idea of a theater is red textile. So the other thing that's important, so we exaggerated with this red, now to be really clear, but it's also, what's also important is that these textiles are from the fundus of the owner. So already existed before. There are different sizes. We just cut them on 5 meters, which is the ceiling height, and what was left, we put it over it. So you have too much of textile, and of course, we used the material that already existed there. So the investor was happy because it was cheap and because we used a thing that already was there. Next. So we basically will move through the building like you would visit it. Next. Next. This is the main, this is then the entrance. Next. This is the entrance to the main stage. Of course, it's again some kind of archetype from the history of theater. It looks like kind of this Palladian, oversized model of a building. And actually, it also is this with its loggias. It has also this idea of the Shakespearean theater. Of course, we didn't make loggias inside because today it's not so. Loggia is not actually the best place to look. It's a good place for you to be seen, but not the best place to look at the stage. So for us, loggias were the part where you enter the theater, and we also produced these stairs because for us, the drama of entering the theater is very important. Now it's part of this idea of visiting the theater. Next. And then this is our favorite building by Gottfried Semper. It's Semper Depot in Vienna. It was actually done as depot for stage sets for opera and theater. But the idea is not the program, but this is the first inside aula. When you step here inside, it's basically a covered square. And also on all these levels, you have these visual connections with people there. Next. So the idea was, because we think that public buildings should somehow address the public domain, should produce some kind of public spaces. And what's interesting, the old theater that's really small, early 20th century secessionist building doesn't have really a foyer. You just basically, you appear in the main hall. So here, because we had enough of space, we said we have to produce a foyer. And the foyer is, for us, it's basically a covered square, you know. So also the lamp is basically street lamp that talks about this idea. And of course, you have this dialogue between this existing ziggurat that has one materiality and the other one that's in a way very tactile. No? Next. So what we're really happy about, this was maybe 1 or 2 months ago, yes, that there was a play, Ibsen's Enemy of the People, where in the halftime when you come out, usually we didn't go back, but the part of the play happened here in our foyer, and we, the people, were kind of actors in the play. So it's very interesting that this addition that we did, that was in a way not part of the brief, in a way also changed how they produced a really classical play in very classical theater. Next. Next. So this is the both faces of the theater. Next. So we are entering. So of course here underneath there are wardrobes, also with the hangars produced with water pipes. Next. This is the theater, the main hall. So it's for 361 seats. The seats are taken from the old theater because we wanted to people to, of course, to have some kind of echo of the original building. And of course, for people that are visiting the theater for 50 years already, that they know, aha, okay, this is my seat, my old seat, everything will be fine. And of course, all the textiles, as I said, are kind of from the fundus of the owner or from the old or from the drama theater. And of course, here again we used it to create space, but we hang them in a different way. So to have this kind of ceiling, tent-like ceiling. Of course, the ceiling is also, it's not just technical. Also, because we didn't want to have just a technical ceiling, also we took these lights that are ventilation pipes, and these are done there in situ, not by a steel worker, but just by electrician guys that were making electricity. They're just cutting there and producing these lights. So everything was made there very quickly. Next. The next important thing, we made this from CLT wood and they just screwed together. So you can unscrew it. And this is this temporal structure that that after a few years, and they will go out, if there won't be this kind of use again, you can unscrew it and do a new building somewhere out of it, because a lot of parts are 10 meters long, so it's really easy to use it again. Next. These are all the parts, next, that we will use at some point again. And this is a short movie, how it was done. I hope I will finish after this in 5 minutes. So this is how the main stage was in a way done. So you can still see the parking places are drawn underneath and are still there under carpet. So the main stage was actually done in approximately 1 week. And even if it's kind of temporary in a way, it had to follow all the fire regulations, had to be soundproof, etc. So it was quite demanding also to produce detailing for it. So it was like it would be there for kind of for longer time. It's also interesting that at the beginning the brief was make us a black box, you know. But when this was our plan, but when this was built, or we saw, I mean, it looks basically interesting. It's good to have some kind of tactility, because of course new theaters are in a lot of cases black boxes, but this one it doesn't need to be so. So also the classical theaters and also the original drama has. It's not a black box, but it's some kind of interior with kind of golden details, etc. So it has some kind of material presence, you know. And then we persuaded the director that basically it should be like that. Here you see we made tests with curtains, and of course. Here you see the guy making the lights. So it's also very interesting that, in a way, now different visitors, when they come here, next, different visitors when they come say, okay, the theater is basically, it's is in a way, next, it's in a way like a scenario, you know, with different stages and different, very different ambience that prepare you for the play. But this was, in a way, never so much a strategy, because usually you make a project and then it goes to tender and it's built. But we didn't have time to make these two phases happen simultaneously. And for us, our plan was a general strategy where somewhere would be put, and then we basically developed room by room. And of course, we did one room, and they build it, and the next, etc., etc. So that's why it is in this way. So it's kind of patchwork of different ambience. So if we had more time, we probably would do it differently, maybe better, maybe worse. So this is the bar. It's again put together with all the different furniture from the fundus of the theater, from the old place, of course. And again, the idea here was some of them are really not really nice designs. But if you put 100 types of chairs, later with the use, if something breaks or if they need more, we don't need to curate that. You know, in a way, it will look more or less the same. Next. Next. This is the part there, and now we go outside. Next. Next. So this is the outside courtyard. This is so. Again, the idea of the courtyard, before it was just for logistics, but now is that this some kind of that we produce as much as possible social situations. So the bar that you saw before is a public bar of the theater. Here is basically the terrace, so officially fire escape, but basically public terrace for visitors. This is the internal bar for all people that work there, actors, technical staff, etc. And of course, we produced, in this high difference, we produced again along kind of almost stage, and where, of course, they use it for socializing. Of course, here, this is again a fire escape that's made in more generous dimensions in order for technical staff to go outside to have a cigarette, etc. Next. Next. So this is again kind of inspiration of us. So it's Ivan Kožarić, again a late Croatian artist. This is called kind of ongoing sculpture head. So basically, what's important here is that this is waste. So he was able to produce from something negative, something that's, let's say, absolutely positive. You know? And this was one of the ideas that we tried to follow with this project. Next, and you can very well see it here. So this is a pavilion that we put it there. So it doesn't have any program. We just put it there, and people can use it for picnics, for whatever. But actually, it's done from next. This is. Before we began with our interventions, these are the original old doors. And of course, some guy said, okay, I can bring it away for 500 euros. So we said, to the waste yard, you know, but it's almost the size of a house, you know, and then we try to work with it. Next. And this was then the result. And we put it just on some simple concrete base now as some kind of folly. Next. Next. So this was this. Next. Again, this is the internal bar. So here, this stage. I talked with the director. Now a young director will now produce a play that will happen actually here. We are very happy because we said, okay, we do this here, and maybe it will be able to host some events, you know. So there was a new director that will actually have a play here and on all the outside situation, you know, from the of our theater, which we are very happy about it because all the outside situation for us were articulated with some kind of stairs, etc., that could host this kind of stuff. But otherwise, it was kind of important. So this is one of these things that will also remain. That's why it's done in concrete. So kind of material that, let's say, could last longer. But of course, it's material from the context there. But for us, it was also not very important to show it that this is a new, different, but it's an addition of one of the series of additions actually that happened here. And that will kind of organically grow together with the context. But the funny story is, before it was already in the same scale, there was kind of an addition from the 60s, and we wanted just to put this public roof on it, but when we began tearing it down, and this was the project, but when we began to tear down the old roof, everything just fell apart, and we had 2 weeks to produce this kind of project, you know. So in few sleepless nights, we then made this building. So next. These are the insights. I mean, the photo is a bit too beautiful, probably, because now we gave this to them. Now it's there are a lot of lights, a lot of photos of actors, which is very important for them, and etc. So they decorated it, and for us it's okay. And this is also the. I mean, these designs are really nice, but these are actually from the old bar from the 70s in the city center. So we just took it here, and actually, it fits really nicely. It also produces some kind of micro-societies here inside when they have parties. And also it's a lot better now than if you would put just tables and chairs, you know. Next. Next. So we go up, next. Next, this is the public terrace, next. And this is the view to the surroundings and the view to this to this folly that we are obviously very proud. Next, and this is the outside. And now we go to the last part, just 2 minutes. This is the main entrance, and this is the entrance to the main stage, the entrance to the small stage. There are 2 entrances and internal connection. We decided for this way because it also the existing building worked in this way. So you see this kind of situation, but we left it like this, as I said. But the parts where people approach, they're done in more tactile materiality, it's just rough plaster. And then, of course, you have some kind of covered entrance, and here we produced a small, let's say, green plaza and an entrance canopy. Next. So this is this part. This is the big theater. This is the small theater. Next. Next. So this is, let's say, a small kind of plaza. So you get a bit higher up from the surroundings. So what is usually a problem, we try to do architecture out of it. So you have this kind of ramp and stairs with kind of not orthogonal geometries, and this canopy that in a way I hope shows that here is entrance to a theater. Next. So this is the entry foyer. It's done with these textile curtains that are used for agricultural greenhouses. Of course, Le Caton Vassal also uses it. Use them extensively in their projects. But the idea was, of course, we have these silvery structures in the big building, and here this is an echo of it, but in a way different. Of course, because the small stage is an experimental stage, also with more or less younger public. So we said, okay, this should have a different character, but also the first stage is kind of the first foyer is like this almost. You know? So it's basically black staged, but this one changes. You know, so because we have windows there. Next. Next. It changes during the day, so it's during the season, and of course. The entrance from the inside is again around vinck, and it just falls inside. But again, we make it red. So in order again to show this is the entrance to the theater, and of course this is so the light is amplified with these silvery curtains, and then you step in next. You step in this small theater. So this one is basically black. So you step in such space. Its character is that it has a lot of this kind of techniques, but otherwise it's 400 seats. But the idea is there is no portal that's in the old building, kind of in a classical way, but there's no bridge between public and people and actors, and sometimes the chairs of the public are here and the stage is here, or everything is dispersed. So it's basically changed all the time. And this is the character is that's kind of it's basically back blocks with a lot of technique that enables this totally different place. Next. And yes, this is the last slide. Next. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your lecture.
Sorry, I was too long for sure.
No, it was really interesting, and we are really happy to have a chance to have such a deep probe into such an interesting project. So thank you for that. And now we would like to continue with the next project, actually the winning one from EUmies Awards, the Charleroi Palais d'Expositions. And I would like to give a floor to Jan der Vylder.
Thank you. I maybe like to quickly thank you for your presentation. And, you know, we had this afternoon a discussion for an interview and whatever. And one of the questions was, where does Mies now like to emphasize on today in their selection? Is there a difference with before? And I think we shared in the discussion that moment of time. So there is, of course, a very urgent agenda that goes with a set of words that can be gathered under the name of adaptive reuse and so on. But you didn't use that word, and I appreciate that. And I think also these words are, of course, now standards. They are not extra qualities. But what is the extra quality, though, is the quality of thinking about projects that appears in a certain time frame and disappear in another time frame, and brings back architecture to its initial act at always. It had always have been an architecture like that. Things have always been reused, have always been recycled, have always been on the track. But then you also, in your lecture, you emphasize to the history of architecture. You talk about Semper. But also, I see your red curtains, and it reminds me of a little, typically everyone knows David Lynch shooting, in which he says, look at that curtain. Look at that curtain. How beautiful it is. That's the way we should talk about architecture. All the other things are standards. They are not mere values in the discussion. And I think their Mies was about making the twist. Last but not least, I like to contribute to your photographer. I mean, it's an amazing set of images he produced. And images that talk about architecture. So anyway, this is my contribution to your work. And now I have to find pace. I walk a little bit. This is just because I cannot long stand, walk, sometimes sit. But standing is merely a problem. Okay, here I try to start. Wow, now it goes really quick. And it doesn't want to go back. Okay, one back, one back, one back. Can we start at the start? One back. Thank you. I don't think what I'm going to bring is a little bit maybe the thinking behind all what we do. Of course, also to end up with presenting the project, what it is about, the Palais des Expositions, Palais des Congrès, now known as Le Grand Palais in Wallonia, in Charleroi. But I start my lecture, so as I said, I want to share also ideas. This is an image I took, I think I was just graduated. It's a Soloist drawing in the entrance of a porch house of a former gallery, and that gallery was sold, and it became a student housing project. And the new landlord ordered 23 doorbells and a light switch, and that's what the electrician did with it. So this reference is extremely important. Till today, I don't know what to think about it, but on the other hand, I believe that these images I took with my Olympus OM10 camera at that point is still what drives me today. This kind of contradiction, this kind of, I don't know. Next. On the occasion of the Book of Charleroi, we named a book that is now published by Ruby Press. We give it a title which is 4 words that are used in other texts and discussions. And as you can see, add on, take away is twisted to add away, take on. And we know again the typical agenda of today, stop this, stop that, all political vowing. But we are architects, we need to play with that. And that's what happens in the twists of words, that happens now also in the drawing of Soluit. Add away, take on, as a better answer to just say stop. Next. First chapter, there are 3 chapters, is about next. Do we live a house or do we house a life? And I will illustrate that with 2 houses, but actually it is as valid also for something like Palais des Expositions. Do we live a building or do we give that building a feeling of home? Next. House and home, we distinguish. Next. Economy. However, in our projects, in our work, in our portfolio, economy has always been the undertone. And I show you now 2 houses, which I call the 100,000 euro houses. It's a little more, 125 and 112 to be precise. Next. On the left, there is a house that we did about 15 years ago for Piet and Allen in the Flemish countryside. And on the right, it is a house we just recently delivered at the same condition. Next, let's just have a look at it. Piet and Allen sit, Jan, remember when we did that 15 years ago, we never used the word reuse, but the house has been heavily reproduced in theses, PhDs, academic research, calling reuse. The right house, however, next, is not at all. We go first, enter Piet and Allen's house, where we made a glazed house in a house. And where winter and summer, but maybe not winter and summer, emotions can alternate to make it larger and smaller. Next. While this house for Zara and Egon is a totally self-constructed house, and I can checkbox with you, it is an absolutely non-ecological materials. Absolutely not. But if we would have flipped to that political agenda, there was no house today. Next. Back to Piet and Allen. We only talked with them about view, light, materiality to touch. Next. And we talked about space. Next. How to live it later and find a place to work, to sit, to enjoy, and many things I can tell. Maybe building physicians would say it's interesting to have this double glazed wall and but I would say, look to the light. Next. Economy has been the drive to talk about architecture, not to talk about economy. Next, however, economy is to me maybe the only ecology. Next. Quickly with our friend AI, and also remembering what we once learned at school, economy comes from the word oikonomia, the Greek word, combining oikos, house, or with household, nemen, to manage. Next, ecology almost means the same, but has been later on rescaled to being the house, the world, but is the study of the idea of the house. Next. Economy is ecology, the only. what can we do with what we have is a more important question than trying to keep all what we have just by upgrading it with material. Next. 100,000 is ecology. Next. Chapter 2. For me, the experience of architecture, the life with, living with architecture, is a matter of doing and is also a matter of considering. Next. Teaching is for me as important as making, and the teaching is also making a doing in the same way for me as making any other discussion, project, or whatever come through. Next. Education comes or can be related to, again, understanding words like educere and educare. The one is sharing knowledge, and the other is revealing knowledge. Next. Next. Again, I quit it now, comes from to bring up, educare, and educere, to lead out, draw forth. Next. I'm a teacher, and this is my office, from where out I teach at a school named ETH Zurich in Switzerland. And we twisted the official name, Chair of Architecture and Design, into the name Chair of Architecture, an attitude. And what you see here is actually my office has a width, a depth of 1.20 meters. It starts here, and it goes 1.20 meters deeper. And when I'm not there, we close the doors with all our belongings. They are locked because students, you know. But the space is open to the school. In our school, we discuss the matter of space, we discuss the matter of shortage of space, and we opened our practice or our office to become an for everyone visitable, workable room the moment we are not there. Next. A second project is a school I started up 5 years ago, which is now a little bit hanging as we will refurbish the building somehow. But we started the school in 2022, which is named the Independence School, a summer school up in the mountains in Switzerland at the Furka Heights. Next. I go back to the office. Next. And I just tell a side story. I like things that are in the periphery around ideas. This is a column in an exhibition space. We were invited to exhibit in 2015 at the same school ahead of being appointed teachers. And in this space, we had at that moment to express what our practice was standing for. They wanted us to show projects. We proposed to work with the space. This is how we found it. Check the ceiling, check the column. There are other things we could talk, but I take 2 examples next of interventions we made in the space. These panels above, no one knew what it was about. We let descend them, and they became displays for a possible exhibition. The columns, we wanted to take away the fire plasterboard to replace it by fire paint and to show the real structure of the house, of the building. We were not allowed by fire department, but check again, so Louis comes back. We draw the column in a certain perspective that comes back from where I'm struggling with, loving to struggling with entire life, the Soluit drawing. Next. Large scale. This was for me the exhibition, ultimately. Just intervening in the space available to explain the way of thinking. Next. Finally, these panels, we had to dismount them after a while, and we brought them back later on. They stayed there in a storage. No one knew why, because they needed to go to Belgium. But they stayed long enough to be at a certain mine implemented. Next in the office present. Next. attitude. Next. We go to the mountain high. In 1992, I believe it was, I drove up to Furka Hotel, where Koolhaas had made an intervention, and I was a young graduate, and I was really intrigued by it. Next. Next. I point to 3 elements of the renovation. First, this marvelous kitchen, marvelous bar that you find there in the restaurant. In a moment, 1992, where possibly OMA was on the small scale at its best. Next. Second, this marvelous terrace to the west. Added on it, where each summer you want to spend your time. Next. And then this kind of big oculus looking to the north into the mountains. Next. We are there every summer, or we were there every summer, and we will be there back every summer from 2027 on, with our school in the Dépendance building, which is in fact the house of the caretakers of the hotel. And it has 14 rooms for the caretakers throughout the summer. And when we found it, it was totally locked, and in every room there was something else. One room with bed ends, one room with mattresses, one room with table, one room with chairs, one room with this, one room with that. We opened the building again. We got license to open a summer school that we can run from 1st of July till end of August, because this year we could enter last week for the first time back on the pass. 2 days later, it was closed again by snow. And we have there a school. Over the summer, there is no teacher. There are only visitors. Next. Oh, backwards. Yes, we open the doors. We make a public space. We also, of course, shelter people that in summer lost their way or were trapped by the climate. Next. And we make a workspace, checking out to the environment of other present institutes at that height. Next. Next. We enter the space, we go to the first level, look to the rooms. We had no electricity the first year, we have no heating at all. We just worked with everything we found on site, even cutlery at the end. Next. The rooms, basic, luckily Swiss blankets, very efficient. Next. But what it was to me, or what it is to us there, that we're looking back to an OMA heritage from 92 or 93 or 91, I don't know anymore. And we look today in a different way to the architecture, to the idea what architecture can be. Next. In our independence, because we emphasize that we are independent from ATH, however, it's my research project, but it's a school for everyone. This is how we today install the bar, how we cook together. No other comment. Next. Next slide. The terrace, as I pointed out. Next slide. Our terrace, as we made with parts of the surrounding. Next. Next. The beautiful cut open of the building by OMA. Next. Our beautiful place where we do every day the dishes, and we never had dirty dishes around because the landscape is amazing, inviting. Next. Next. And now quickly some slides, one after the other, thank you, of all activities over the summer. Next, you can now run a little bit. Oh, tempo, please do. Why I show it? Because to me what happened in Charleroi is not just something which is about that building or that circumstance or that condition that is given. It is about a way we look generally to things, and it is about how this way constantly is under evolution. And at the same time, shares maybe only one thing overall. Are we architects or are we not? You can move on. Maybe the next you stop for a second. Thank you. This is the work of a Flemish, Belgian philosopher, activist, Lieven de Kouter, writer. And he has this pessimism in theory, optimism in practice, which he rewrote poetry in action. Next. We did an exercise with students in the mountains. Let's move on. This must be somewhere in July. Let's move on with these images. Maybe they are a little too much. We did also scientific work with colleagues from the ATH, like monitoring the mountains and everything. It's not only architects, it's our artists, it's our scientists that come together. Educare, education, next, educare. Maybe next, some slides too much. It is about the way how in practice and in teaching we share ideas. And next, architecture becomes rather a matter of attitude than anything else. 3. Here we come now to the Mies. Yes. And I would like to talk about an idea which is the idea of entre acte. I just introduced already the idea of time and the idea of scape. Place, scale. A beautiful image that we found whilst the project was already under process, and what you see is the center part of the building, which is a connecting lobby space, and where for one of other events there had been an exhibition which was named the Picturesque. What a fantastic image to find when one is on a project which is about. Next. Because that's the project. It was in August, summer. It was a competition, not remunerated, anonymous. And we gathered together and thought maybe we should not do it. But then we said, let's make a proposal by which we would like to lose it, rather a proposal to try to win it. This is an image which is the key. This is the project entire Palais des Expositions. You have to imagine there are 3 levels on each side. 1 level, 2 levels you don't see because we are at the above city side, and you look to the industrial landscape around. We talk about the end of the 50s where it is realized, and we talk about an era where heavy industry is still the power of Europe. And you see, they built themselves a palace of industry, palace of capitalism. And what you see when you look at it as an architect is that you see that the 3 main halls, stacked above each other, are about to be finished, while the center part, a lobby space as they named it, seems to have a patio, which the moment of the competition, one could not see. It was a technical patio. But you see also there is still a lot of transparency in the middle part. Next. The brief said the mayor of Charleroi was someone with a vision for the city that by now, or by then, 10 years ago, was a city which really struggled and was under attention of the European community and could collect money as old industrial city to revive the city. He got 500 million euros, but he did not give it to Frank Gehry or Nouvelle or something like that to make a new Bilbao. He spread it over the city, and for this project they had 35 million euros available. I can tell you this is 1/3 or 1/4 what it should be. But they were smart and they said, listen, we know that there is a shortage. So please check the middle key as being the new part that should redistribute the way you can use the building with the 6 different big spaces. And they said it should be a zero energy building, and it should talk about the status of architecture, art of architecture, facade, perception as it is today. This is our proposal based on that building site image. It's August, we want to be lazy, we want to go home, and we just rewrote that image of the building site into a project becoming a lobby space, zero energy because it's an outside space, and a way we think we should think about architecture, because the bottom line of the entire project is that actually it was on the list of demolishing, because indeed the programmatic need of 66,000 square meter in a nowadays context does not make sense. Next. So the competition said 1/3 of the money available. Next. It said focus on the center. Next. And it said zero energy and state of the art of architecture. Next. Another model, a little bit further in the process, working this out as an entire open space. Next. On top, our proposal costed 1/3 of the money available. So 1/3 of 1/3. We could go back with a competition proposal that delivered money, and we could renegotiate what to do with the building. Next. And this is what we negotiated. Next. We start now from the lower part of the city, walking up through the building, and I give you some notes aside. Here we walk in. None of the colors have been invented by us. They were the original colors we just simply brought back. Next. Not that these colors were extremely appealing, or how to say, had a story behind, because there was a tennis ground play inside for a certain period. It was green. Next. We look now backwards to the suburbs around, and we see these typically heaps of waste of steel and coal, which changed the nature around the city. Next. We move on. This spazio was never visible. We made it visible in the project. Next. Please continue. Chimneys are there, still reminiscence of old boiler rooms that served the heating of the city. Move on. You can move on. Thank you. Actually, recently I said it's a project by AgwA and our practice in collaboration with Doorzon interior architects, with Denis Dujardin, the landscape architect, with Graisch, the engineers, and many others. But recently I said, actually, we should name the original architect, Joseph André. Because what we did maybe merely, no more, no less, is actually working with his work. We helped to reread it in a contemporary meaning, but to reread it also in a meaning that in the next future, one can get along with it. We did not invest in rematerializing this space, but freeing it from material, making it open. Yes, we demolished, but we add away and took on. But also, and that's the most important, I said, it is available for another future. Maybe one day, new facades are back, I would be happy by the end of my long life to discover that. Next. Next. This is, I think, this goes quick. This is what think connects our both projects that Mies Europe Prize for Architecture brought under attention. Are we still capable to talk like architects and in the meantime go beyond checkbox thinking and understand that we work in time and space? Next. We walk now back towards the city, next towards the south for a moment, where you have reminiscences of parts we even had to demolish as they were in such bad condition, but still play a role in the architectural setting of the campus. Next. We look back and we look to the city. So close we are in the city. This building was really thrown as a massive block in the center of the city. You can continue. Economy is standardizing material, and when it does not fit, please can you, now you go really too quick. Can we go back? When the standards don't fit. Next. And now you see through the building, like on the image that was there, or suggested image of the building site in 50 or 40, I don't know, 58, sorry. Please continue. Entre actes is a French for between the acts. So we are as architects there to serve in that sense. It is the red curtain going down, and behind the decor is changing. Times are changing the decor, and in front I play ukulele or I try to be funny. That's the position of the architect, really, I believe we should embrace. Next. Because scape and space have something, it's an escape in space, out of space, into a dream, into something else. Next. It brings me to a project that goes together with it, and I just walked through, which went ahead of this project, and is about the same problem. If we would not have made a pavilion, which is just about delaying a decay in a weight of other ideas, but in the same time regenerating ideas of the moment, namely a space for a psychiatric clinic. We can walk through this one. The roof was taken off before the competition, and they found asbestos, by which the demolishing was delayed, and a young director, together with Gideon Boyer, who we unfortunately lost 2 weeks ago. They invented the idea of the friction of space and the friction of mental diseases, where people could meet, where people could find their own peace. We delayed the building, and today it is back on the list of making a building out of it. And people say to me, Jan, you cannot let that happen. And I said, well, that was exactly the idea. There is a book that we made, it's called Unless Ever People, and it flips also the real understanding why this space was so needed into a simple understanding, unless ever people. It's a little catalog, not a catalog, a little manual, not a manual, a little kind of report we made on the occasion of the presentation of the project at the Venice Biennale 2018 or 19, I don't know anymore. You can move on this. It is important we reflect and consider, and also this is a project of a communal work together. Entr'acte and escape. Yes? I know you want to finish me, but it's not yet there. It's about, can you go one back? No one back? Yeah. It's about the delay, and escape is about the dream. Next. Entr'acte is a matter of time, and escape and the dream is a matter of space. Next. The moment I met that moment many times in my life, the moment that I could not be an architect anymore, I escaped the fields many times. So much more I saw what architecture could be. And the moment that I understood what architecture seems to not be about, so much better I understood what it could be about. And now, please, next. San Gotardo, same day, 1 year difference. On the left side, nothing to see. On the right side, and I appreciate that in the images of you, a kind of humidity, a kind of grayness, a kind of white in the sky brings things in a different way together. The pile, the sign, the horse. Can you see the next? I think it's on the next. Becker? Yeah. Next. Things that have nothing to do with each other, all at once have something to do with each other. Reminded as architects, you're not there to fulfill checkbox, you are there to mess up the checkboxes. Next. The only place where the word re belongs is in the word dream. Or in the next word. Realm, dream. Or in the next word. I used to paint on Sundays. On magazines that guide your Sunday newspaper and that have no meaning. Yeah, next. And I paint them every week. I stopped it by now. And I just, next. This happened out of it. You can continue now for a while. Go ahead. Go ahead. Stop. To end up with the next sentence, above to the left, is the end of a text I wrote, and of 3 people came back to me later on saying, can you repeat it? At the same time, something else can be said with this. The seriousness, but also the fever with which today responsibility is imposed on not just architecture, but in fact on everything, indeed also art, is the cause that precisely free thinking, which indeed enables so much more, is at risk. I am worried. I'm deeply worried. Yes, next. Here are the words again. A second attempt to allocate the word re. Next. Re belongs to the word irresponsible. Thank you. Just to add, what I came to present is, of course, the work of my practice, architecten Jan de Vylder, Inge Vinck, and one main important work of Charleroi, together with AgwA and the others I named, as also Gideon Boye with the work of Caritas. Thank you. Now we have to see seated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to ask you, Rohe, if you join us for a short discussion. As I mentioned before, you have a chance to join the discussion by scanning the QR code. And if you do it, you will find yourself in a very simple form that will allow you to ask questions via Slido. And if you would like to join discussion in person, just raise your hand and my colleagues will pass you a microphone so you'll be able to ask questions. Thank you both very much for your lectures and such a deep dive into your minds and your processes, because it was very inspirational and it was nice to see what was the top of EUmies Awards in 2026. So thank you very much. I would like to ask you about limits, because that's something that your projects have in common. There were some financial limits, sources were limited, the space was very specific. Do you think that was something that moved the creative process forward, in a meaning that it helped you to reach the level that we are talking right now, that you had really strict limit what you can spend on the temporary theater?
Yes, in our case, for sure. Does this work? Okay. Yes, but we didn't see it as limiting. Maybe also not because our practice before did just interventions in the existing, so or so, more or less, and we never had this kind of big budgets. No, we had mini budgets or medium. So this was nothing new for us, just on a big scale. Maybe we had before a bit of exercise how to work with small budgets, but what's very interesting that because of that you have to be creative, because you have, so our project was 4,000 square meters, no? So we needed, I don't know, 1,000 square meters of curtains, no? I mean, of something, no, to produce atmosphere, let's say, and spaces. So you can do it, you cannot do it, doesn't make sense to do it with color, So you take textile, you know, so or so, because its architecture was also, let's say, the right decisions, we thought, but then we just used textile, it's already there, so no one needed to buy it. So for us, in a way, for sure, this was a very interesting starting point to do things in a different way. So this was for sure never limiting for us.
In your case, was that the limit, the financial situation,
Well,
or did you find some other limits?
The matter of limits is, to me, merely a matter of reality. In a public building like that, I say that often with collaborators or whoever is involved, is we're working with public money, and that's my tax money. That's why I like to drive with my children 3 times around the roundabout, telling them that it's my roundabout. This is very important. So it's not about limits, but it's about reality. There is just not more. And we have to contribute to not make it more. And it's the same, especially with people with private means, like Piet and Ellen and Egon and Zara. Also a case of Egon and Zara, which is 2 years old, still trying to make a 100 and a little bit more house. Of course, with do-it-yourself work, sure. But that's also an idea on how close can architecture be? Is it something that needs to be realized for you, or is it something that you can participate in that themselves? And this is important. However, as well in Charleroi as with Piet and Allen, actually we never constantly talked about economy like we didn't talk about reuse. We not constantly say, yeah, but we cannot do this. We needed to say, okay, if not, then we can do that. The big project of Charleroi was guided by this typically semi-public, semi-private company which cities rely on to get their big stuff done. So they are tough people. They do the calculations and everything and the regulations, and they're constantly on your neck. And at the end of it, the director came to me and said, well, you know, this was the best time of my life, 10 years long, because actually, first of all, we didn't understood where you were going, but you didn't came to lay that on us. you started with us to go to a parcours which is about economy, when also indeed you had indeed a pandemic and all the costs were rising and we couldn't let it go higher and you had to follow it up. And we made it indeed, with, if not this, we can do that. And at the end he said, and at the end I saw how beautiful it was. But you never talked about architecture. But we never talked about economy also. We just talked about, okay, if not this, then that. So limits sounds sexy, but it's not about limits, it's about realities.
Thank you. I would like to ask you if you have any questions. You'd like to ask with the projects that we have seen. Anyone? We can continue on programming because those projects are kind of different in the scale. The convention center that we have seen from 50s, it's the vast waste object. It's really big, and even if it has a human scale, the stairs and details are there. So when you're there, you're not lost. But you have to find a way how to use all of these objects, all of these spaces. How did you work with the layers that are there? How did you work with the people going through the space? How you guided them through the such a space as we have seen to be accommodated, to be used enough?
The first to say is maybe that one of the parts of our processing with the client, where we give 2/3 of the money back, we of course had it in the hand to negotiate what to do with the money. And programmatically seen, it was clear that still the building would be far too big. So we renegotiated where the money to invest, namely to say, let's reconsider the program and understand with us together that actually you need not even half of the building. So the layer is there that we invented that middle space that accommodates one building of 3 levels, which is not climatized. It has no energetic conditions. While the other, we invested in energetic conditions. We have 2 times 3 levels, and the middle part we designed or we opened to different ends of the city so that it even can be used at the same time for different events. So the middle point is a park, but it's also actually a smart distribution disk in the usage. Important to know it's a commercial project. So it's not a museum. It's not a exclusive beacon in Charleroi, unfortunately, I would say, but it is something that needs to be operated by someone in all its needs. So the layers are there when it comes to the spatial use in the core of the building.
Thank you. And in case of the drama, there was a kind of a transferring program of some other space to the new one, to the new location. Considering that we are doing the same, that we have to move camp to another location, of course we are inspired by things, how they are done here, and we would like to transfer it somewhere else. How difficult it was to find the programming for such an institution into a logistic hall?
Yes, it was actually, obviously we didn't do something like that before. So, because architect is basically, someone said, kind of constant amateur, you know. So, and so the first sketch was done by their team, their technical team, but it was very kind of, it worked. So they just put stuff together, you know, but there was no. And it was good they did it, because we said, okay, we will come here inside, you will go to the play, or the actor will go to the rehearsal. So everything was just kind of like you would make a project for I don't know, do-it-yourself store, this kind of efficiency without any quality and the idea how people would move through the building, as you said before. So so this was the first proposal that more or less functioned, but architecture is not just about function, it's I mean, that it functions is something that's normal, you know. So you have to produce some kind of way that people go through the building, then materialize it, etc. But so it was in a way. We copied how the old building worked. Because it was a bit unusual. It has two entrances: the entrance to the main stage and the entrance to the new stage that was, of course, there in the city, added later in the 60s. And in this way, it helped us because the old building is in a way vertical, you know. So one stage is over another, and this is horizontal. So it basically is totally different. But with this idea of two entrances, we could somehow solve it, that you enter from two sides. We also articulated two let's say, parts of the building, and then in between there is a technical connection, you know. But they, for the outside visitors, they work separately. So this was kind of our, in a way, solution.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I would like to ask you again, audience, if anyone has a question. I have some questions on Slido, so I can continue with them. But if you, yeah, great. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you for inviting these two guests, and I just want to thank you for the two talks, which I think we all seen. It's like a kind of one conversation, so thank you for this. And also it's a question I have for you, because by coincidence I've been in Ljubljana in Museum of Architecture and Design at the moment when it was announced who you are as winners, Vidic Grohar and Van de Vylder, I'll tell you. And the next day I went to observe the drama theater. And it was such an intense good feeling that even in this our shared post-stage socialist kind of terrain, even though we have this long history of Plečnik here in Prague in there, but these last decades, it was such a kind of motivating moment to find out one of the awards is for a public client, and this kind of architecture of a smaller studio. So my question is now, you too, I don't know if you, for Grohar Vidic, if you have been lecturing in Prague before or not,
No.
but we remember, Jan de Vylder was here with Gideon Boy 8 years ago at the Academy of Fine Arts. It's thank you for mentioning Gideon. You're on a tour of a kind, no? Because you are domain winner teams and you're starting to tour European cities. So do you think in these difficult times, really not only free thinking, but any thinking is even in danger and risk, and in relation to architecture, is there a potential, you're now active players in it, to make some public education, not towards the public, but towards the public institution, to municipalities and public institutions, to give more possibilities to this kind of architectural care when you will tour now the cities? This is a kind of diplomacy you do for all of us, and it's a difficult task. But do you believe this kind of public education by these examples when the award gives the attention to these kind of projects? Because your offices don't need it. You are very coherent offices doing your work for years. But how you feel in this role of touring together or meeting? And do you believe this public education of the public institution, is there a chance that this has an impact? Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much for that question.
Well, let's again grant us to Mies 26 European Architecture Award to select these both projects. And of course we are all responsible, we have to be. But indeed the responsibility can be achieved by being irresponsible now and then. And I think for me, we have to critically also discuss that in education. I don't know, we had an interview and a video session this afternoon, but what I wanted to say is, lost my plot now. You really lost my plot on education, sorry. It's getting, on education is that, what I want to say is next, we had at this point, today there's a very huge table of everyone wanted to take care of the urges of time. It starts, finally. A lot of specialists, a lot of knowledge, also in academia. But to bring this discussion to change is not the result of deduction. And we as architects on the table, we have one instrument no one else has. Maybe also the artist, of course. Form. We have form. I think we should speak out also to public commissioners and everyone that it's time to think back about form. Because this form brings all these urges and all these solutions to a point that after all, when you are somewhere, whether you want to be there or not. The explanation of whatever you do in sustainability and ecology and all what you do, even our explanation about economy in a certain way, at the end I go back to David Lynch saying, look at that curtain. What a beautiful red curtain. I think this is what the point is to get back, because the profession is over-politicized, over-activized with all kind of slogans that hide away from the real quality or what an architect or architecture can do. I'm part of many juries and so on, and architect speaks like specialists. They talk about, yes, our building is zero, that's the first part of their presentation, zero energy building. And then they move on with saying that they have 25% recycled material. And I look to it and say, can we get to the matter? But the mayor says, Chuck, I can sell this. But we should not sell that. We should not sell anything. But we should, again, as architects, being architects, goddammit, nothing more.
What's your take on bringing a message on a tour, traveling around Europe with your project, but also your messages and your ideas and your positions against the future of architecture?
I think as far this tour is concerned, I don't know if it's a tour, but I would surely be very happy if Jan would come to Ljubljana and, of course, have a lecture. So, and because if he's still not convinced to come, I will sell him Plečnik, because usually we get great architects to come to Ljubljana.
It's not a secret for me. I'm raised by it.
Great. So yes, but I think that this let's say that maybe, let's say Mies Awards and similar things give the attention to some themes that are obviously relevant, and these kind of themes, then maybe, and of course this kind of themes has to come to the people that decide things, no? So let's say if Jan would come to Ljubljana, we make a symposium, and then the mayor sees this, how he can get something for 1/3 of the price, no? And then it possibly can get an award. Maybe he's convinced. I mean, I'm joking, but this is the way, because, okay, it's totally different, let's say, field of architecture, but if you know the Ibavi project, so this very successful social housing project in Balearic Islands, so they have their own croquis, and that was a project that went on for 10 years, approximately. So, but it was an architect that was kind of sitting there in the office with the authority and pushing this idea, organizing competitions for different young practices, etc. And they now, I think that they built, I was there one month ago, so in the Balearic Islands, I think they built around 20 of this kind of projects that are super radical in the way how they handle, of course, the themes of ecology, but through reinvention in materiality, in typology, etc. And this was possible because of this super enthusiastic architect that had, let's say, political function at that point. And when the political climate changed, also he lost, let's say, this position, and also the IBAVI changed. So they still do social housing, but at the same way as 20 years ago. No? Typologically, materially conservative. And so this is the way that if you want to make change, of course, you need some kind of, it has to be a combination of bottom-up, because this is where the concepts, let's say, come, new concepts, and then top-down that furthers these ideas. I mean, I didn't say nothing special. I don't know how really to push this forward, but maybe we begin with talk in Ljubljana.
Thank you for those answers, and also for the question, because we have a nice case study that we had the exhibition of EUmies from the last edition, and it was a very successful exhibition, because those projects that are in the finals, that are shortlisted, they are very close to people. They are really easy to be understood. People understand what they see, they understand the stories, and they're really close to them. So it's a case study that you can bring to someone, and they will understand why it's successful, and they can imagine it can be part of their cities. So that's, I think that talks for it, that this is really great chance to spread some message around Europe. Thank you for the question, and I would like to ask you to ask another one. If anyone is interested to join the discussion, feel free to do it. Yes? Thank you, and welcome to camp.
I'm just coming from the Faculty of Architecture, CTU, where we're having the defenses of the diplomas today. So there are about 150 diploma graduates and about 150 practicing architects, which are there this evening and not here. So we're sorry about that. But the question was, and you mentioned it, that education has to change. And I would like to know how.
Thank you.
Well, let's say I try to put small contributions to that. I think that's where it first starts. That is often the discussion now today is that it's a top-down decision how to change it. Now, as an architect, you have that advantage, as I told, about the instrument of form, which is actually also a capacity to constantly reform and rethink things. So I gave the example of my quite rigorous big office. I got granted having a chair, and how by simple gesture there we brought something to the realm where people learn about, to understand how you can work with space. So first of all, I think that the change is not an per se or only an institutional overview thinking. I see that a lot of schools today suffer from that idea that it needs to have a general overview, and by that, of course, one comes in a discussion which is possibly rather coming to an average ambition than it is a set of impossible ambitions with each other. This is a very European phenomenon. I come out of a school where I was taught architecture and art at the same platform. Dan van Severen and Julian Lampes were teachers. And it was a total other, it was not about the genius, but it was about positions. Today, we see that there is always an overarching ambition that not per se allows that kind of irresponsibility, if I now could clear it in that way. So what needs to change, I think, is that especially in academia, we should not protect, but we should give place to practice. It's to me unbelievable. I cannot understand it that, for example, in a Belgian realm, when a school wants to hire architects from a practice with a certain interesting viewpoint, officially they turn them into assistant or in practitioner assistants. People of really just to solve it administratively and kick them out every 6 years because it cannot continue. There are some really perverse mechanisms from the institution, but there are also, how to say, some, okay, then it's like it is, from below to top. So I think it's a personal issue, but it's also, let's say, Bologna was a long time ago, isn't it? I appreciate that my school, which is of course a very Swiss school, we don't have that. We don't have that. Architecture is taught by practitioners. We have good KTA institutes, good ETA technology, history and everything, perfectly working. But when it comes to the matter of that table where finally students need to learn to bring things together, form rules. And I find that important. Maybe it's a too provocative answer, but I think it's time to quit Bologna when it comes to architecture.
Thank you. Rohe Grohar, vylder. Thank you both. Thank you very much for your lectures. And thank you for your attention. A ještě si dovolím nakonec malou pozvánku. Centrum architektury městského plánování se stěhujete, jak víte, já jsem to na začátku zmiňoval. 25. nás tu čeká poslední rozlučková party akce, na kterou doufám, že přijdete rozloučit se nejenom s kempem dočasně, ale také s budovou, kterou čeká rekonstrukce. Děkuju moc krát za těch 9 sezon, které jste tady s námi strávili. Doufám, že se s vámi neloučíme na dlouho a doufám, že nám zůstanete věrní a těším se na vás v nových prostorách a v nové sezóně. Takže mějte se zatím krásně.